Greetings everyone. Welcome to CEC Gurukul lectures. I am Mehak Chawla, arts educator, Bharatanatyam dancer and disciple of Guru Srimati Geeta Chandranji. We are going to continue with painting and we are going to study about the information in literature about painting. The text which just shared provide a good deal of information about the process and techniques in painting, preparation of colors and brushes, shadangas, the 6 limbs of the art of painting, Rupa Bhed, variety of form, Pramana, which is proportion and size, Bhavya Yojana, the infusion of different emotions, Lavanya Yojana, creating the luster and retaining the freshness of colors, Sadrusya, bringing likeness in the form, and Varnika Bhanga, which is creating color effects to bring the depth in the work. So these are shadangas of painting which one has to keep in their mind. A painting is created by using these shadangas. Once the subject is decided, the artist starts thinking about how to put this in a figure, what types of form or rupa are suitable for the subject. The forms are drawn on the surface with a proper understanding of the space. The forms are to be proportionated to the size of the given space. Then the forms are infused with the different emotions depending on the rasa of the picture. What is conceived has to be in likeness to the image around us. For example, when you draw a chair and table as kept in a room, they should look like a chair and table and not something else. After drawing the sketches, the different colors are mixed and painted. While painting, care is to be taken not to create muddy patches but retain the freshness of the colors. Now, let's talk about the technique of coloring. The ancient texts give details on ways of coloring a picture. There are 3 ways of applying colors to the form drawn. Bindu Vartana is shading bindu. Bindu is dot. So when the space is filled in dot of different colors, different shades are created. The other technique is Rekha Vartana. Rekha is line, filling the form with fine line shading. This is known as silver point. And Patra Vartana, applying different colors with wider brushwork in cross-hatching manner. So these are the 3 different techniques which are being used in this. Now let's study about the colors and the emotion in painting. Emotion is the soul of painting. In a figure painting, the emotions give life to the portraiture. For example, in a scene where Buddha comes to his own house for alms, the emotion in his face is serene, filled with compassion and detachment. His wife with her child on the doorstep looks at him with a sense of pathos. and his child looks at Buddha in wonder. The artist has brought the emotions concerned to the subject in this painting. In this way, colors help in expressing the proper emotions in painting. Now, after painting, let's study about sculpture, the early stages. You might have visited a temple or a chaitya where you might have seen some sculptures. You were able to understand some of them, but not everything. The sculptural art in India developed with a divine background. Let us try to know the significant features and the development of sculpture in India. Indian sculpture is the product of Indian culture. The sculptural tradition emerges from folk level in villages. The potter's wheel is the first instrument which turned the clay and created different shapes of pots and dishes. In the beginning, images were created in clay on a small scale. Later, it progressed into the terracotta art. The images were made out of fine clay and then baked in a kiln so that the images did not melt when it came into contact with water. Sculpture as an art form progressed into many styles during the historical period. We get to see many sculptures of gods and goddesses created in sculpture, metal, wood and ivory for the purpose of worship. The sculptures were also created to decorate the different parts of the Buddhist, Jain and Hindu architecture. Now let's study about the basic elements of sculpture. There have been two streams of sculptural traditions. Folk level in villages, which is natural and functional, which is also known as lower tradition or little tradition. Sculptures produced at this level are for different seasons, festivals or ancestral worship. And the second one is at classical level based on the principles and text, which is also known as higher tradition. The sculptures have to follow certain text to create sculptures. These two traditions are not exclusive to each other. The roots of higher tradition are in the lower tradition. For example, the worship of snake or tree is basically part of village belief, but the higher tradition picked up the practice from such beliefs and added their value system based on text and literature. These later became major religious symbols with their own meanings in Buddhist, Jain and Hindu traditions. Let's study about the basic techniques of sculpture. The technique discussed are basically used for stone carving, minute carving and inlay work are used in wood and ivory carvings. The techniques used for metal sculptures are entirely different. Engraving. The figures were carved on rocks. In the beginning, such line carving on the surface of the rock is known as engraving. For example, engravings in the rock art phase. And now let's study about the low relief. Compared to engraving, The low relief sculptures are deeply carved. The image and motif appear as the embossed ones. The stories of epics, Hindu, and Jataka, Buddhist stories were created in low relief techniques, which is deeply carved. Examples are the narrative panel from Buddhist Chaityas such as Sanchi and Bharhut, and middle relief. Now we'll study about middle relief. In middle relief sculptures, they are more deeply carved than the low relief sculptures. These sculptures create the illusion of movement. Such high relief are seen on the walls of many temples. High relief, in this, the figure emerges out of the wall, but the rear portion of the figure cannot be seen. The sculpture found in the rock cut architecture are the examples of high relief. In images in the round, the sculptures that are seen all round belong to this category. An entire stone is carved in the form of an image for the purpose of worship or to place in the required positions of the temple units. For example, the image worshipped in the Garbhagriha of the temple, and the other one is stencil tile. In this, the carving on temple has one more style called stencil. In this technique, the entire surface remains plain, but the cutting of figure and designs is done deep into stone. The carvings on the shikhara of the Hindu temples are done in this style. Later, we find abundant use of this technique in Islamic art. And the other one is metal sculptures. They are popularly identified as bronze. This is an important branch of Indian sculpture. The art of metal casting always received great attention and is of the highest antiquity. The metal sculptures are found even in the Indus Valley period, dated around 3000 BC. So there are basic two techniques in metal casting. The first technique is low wax method. In this, metal images were cast by the Sire Purdue or lost wax process. The steps to be followed in this method are: the image is conceived and modeled, first using only wax. This model is coated with layers of fine clay. Now, wax cannot be seen and the model looked like a clay image with an opening at the top and bottom. The liquid metal is then poured into this hole and the wax melts and flows out through the other hole. Thus, the wax is lost and the hot metal liquid flows into the clay image. It should be allowed then to cool down. Then the clay covering is to be broke open. The metal image is seen. The sculptors give final touches by chiseling unnecessary parts, carving the decoration and polishing the image. The sculpture of the dancing girl from Indus Valley is the earliest example of metal sculpture in India. Large numbers of metal sculptures are found in archaeological excavation of the historical periods, but the finest example is the Nataraja sculpture from the Chola period. And the other method is hollow wax method. It was to create a model in clay with all detailed and then pour the liquid metal thinly all over the model. After cooling, the clay part is removed and the mold would be hollowed. Such sculptures come from many folk traditions. Now let's study about the ancient texts on Indian sculpture. The word for sculpture is shilpa, which means to create. Several texts were written which can be brought under the category of shilp texts. The development of Hindu temple architecture is closely associated with the rituals. There are many texts known as agamas, which are like manuals of performing rituals in the system of worship. There are separate texts for Hindu, Buddhist and Jain sculptures. In Hinduism itself, there are texts on Shaiva, Vaishnav and Shakta. Shakta is Shakti and other deities. These texts give the details of iconography, the seating, standing postures, hand postures, the dress they should wear, the attributes they hold in hands, the types of head gears, jewelry they have to wear, the vehicle they use and such other things. After sculpture, now let's study about architecture. Among all art forms that have been evolved, architecture by itself is functional. It is useful from the point of view of providing basic needs for a man in the form of providing shelter. With the development of civilization, man's needs to live in a better house became a priority. He also felt the need to construct a better place to worship God. To make the better place worthy enough to live or worship, man discovered and used many kinds of materials in construction. Since architecture is not a pure art like sculpture and painting, more is attention paid to create a plan and use of material and also procuring materials. It is essential to know the development of architecture to understand the history and culture of a place. Let's study about the evolution of architecture. You must have seen around you the houses, mansions, market centers, shopping complexes, temples, churches or mosques. You also must have seen, at least in photographs or television, many great grand structures built in early times. They are all classed as architecture. When you really see them yourself, you realize the greatness of the structures and the skills with which they were built. Architecture began when man looked for better protection, then a cave, and then began to think of a shelter for him to live. After man learned to make working tools for agriculture or household use, his dwelling place never remained a mere hole or a nest. It became a utilitarian structure that gradually acquired an aesthetic aspect. This marked the beginning of architecture. Architecture is shaping of reality according to the laws of beauty in the building of houses and structure designed to cater to man's needs for housing and public premises. Architecture creates an enclosed, utilitarian artistic environment distinct from nature and the elemental environment and enabling people to use the humanized space in accordance with material and cultural requirements. Let's study about the principal elements of architecture: line, plane, surface, color, material, space and time are the elements of architectural design. The common task for an architect and a designer is to give structure and meaning to the human environment. Many of the ideas are inherited from the pioneers of architecture and design. Architecture is expressive than representational. The rhythm of spatial relationships and lines is an important expressive means. Design is essential element of architecture. It is also a creative exercise. It needs a clear understanding of the space when the architecture is to be executed. It also needs a clear understanding of the climatic conditions and the directions of sun and light. Soil testing is also an essential element, and the technical knowledge which is to be obtained by engineering skills. A clear plan will solve many problems. The building has to be designed to suit the needs and tastes of the builder. Now let's study about the nature of architecture. It is the art of erecting buildings that are comfortable to live in, beautiful to the eye and durable. It creates a material, man-made environment in which he lives and works. It is important that the work of architecture should fit into the natural and urban landscape. The architectural image is inseparable from the function of the structure and originally expresses its purpose. The forms of architectural structure depend on geographical and climatic conditions, particularly on the intensity of sunlight, rain, or even earthquake. The architects design the structure according to their taste and principles of work, which are socially conditioned. The development of architecture depends on the social system, aesthetic ideals, utilitarian and artistic requirements of the society. It is also linked with the available technology. It combines art, engineering and construction together. Perhaps no other kind of art requires such a concentration of effort and material resources as architecture. It may be combined with monumental painting, sculpture and decorative arts. the architectural composition is based on a three-dimensional structure and organic interconnection of the elements of the buildings. The scope of the work determines the artistic image and monumental character. Now let's discuss about the different types of architecture. To begin with, Egyptian architecture. In ancient Egypt, they built huge tombs in the shapes of pyramids. For example, the Great Pyramid in Giza is 150 meters high. This kind of architecture is marked by early understanding of geometrical shapes and lines. It is also to be noticed that these structures are constructed without any joints. These grand structures were created not to satisfy the worldly needs of the people but for religious purposes. This was to formally establish the political power of the rulers who were known as pharaohs. Now about Indus civilization. The very early material for architecture was timber, which is wood. Later, the bricks made of mud were used for architecture. A very early and fine example of houses constructed with mud bricks was found in the cities of Indian civilization such as Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Lothal and others. Public buildings were also constructed in other places using wood and mud bricks. Early temples in European cultures were built with sunburned bricks and decorative with mosaic, which is using colored stones or tiles of some small sizes and creating a motif or design, and mural paintings. Later, stone became the common material for architecture. Because of the use of stone, the size of the building enlarged. They became long lasting, permanent and looked grand. We also have Greek architecture, which was the foundation of many subsequent styles in different parts of the world. The temples, palaces, market squares, landscape gardens, houses, swimming pool. These architectural achievements are of the Greeks. It reflected a cultural blossoming of Greek society. We also have Indian architecture. In India, the tradition is influenced by two major religions, Hinduism and Buddhism. According to requirements of worship, temples were built. And we also have Islamic architecture. In this architecture, we have a mosaic, and the religious architecture are interpreted in their holy book, Quran. With this, I conclude my lecture here. Thank you.